Okay, we're back with more misinformation about USAID. I can't believe it, Penny. When we did this last time and we had Anna on the show, we thought, maybe no one was really paying any attention. But lo and behold, Joe Rogan, minutes later, releases his episode with Mike Benz. Is that right?
He sure did, but we got to some of the story first, which was pretty cool.
Oh, feather in the cap. That's good.
Yeah, it felt pretty good. So, but yeah, I've listened to the Mike Benz interview with Joe Rogan a couple of times and made a whole lot of notes because... and so we're just going to kick off with it. But what we're all seeing is that there's something fishy going on as far as a contrived effort to keep us separated and angry. So I just want to play just a minute of his show.
Before you do, I just want to say, because I'll forget this, but he says famously in this rather long interview, right? It's about 3 hours or something. We're just going to play a little bit. That USAID is the agency that does the dirty work that's too dirty for CAA to do. I was like, okay, it's all starting to make sense.
Yeah, right. And it's quite morbidly fascinating for us in New Zealand, right? Because we're not used to having these sort of agencies and referring to the actions of them in as much as our own political situation. So the whole thing's quite fascinating, quite terrifying.
True. But, and for those listening on today's show, we're going to uncover some of the infiltration of that cobweb or the tentacles of USAID into New Zealand and the funding that's been going on here, yeah? Yeah,
specifically around the pride and the LGBTQ movement. And, right. If anyone has been listening to me before, they'll know that I'm on that topic quite a bit, and with Let Kids Be Kids and my own stuff, and as much as tracing sort of the funding and all the interlinks and things like that. So this is just a bit of a connection that I have found between USAID funding and some of the rainbow organisations in New Zealand.
Right. I'll hit it. Go for it.
Yeah, so we're just going to kick off. We're about 2 hours into this conversation where he just brings up some stuff about the LGBTQ. We'll just play it for about a minute.
As being a demographic. See, every time we do these operations, USAID, the NGOs, they'll submit what they call a baseline assessment or strategic assessment to the State Department, where they will do a demographic segmentation of all the demographics in the country, who's pro us, who's against us in the region, and then they will micro-target the grants and the capacity building to capacity build the burning ember to turn it into a flame. So, for example, and just so you see this, I mean, you can go to the CI World Factbook right now. This is just the public-facing CI.gov. You can type in a random country like Burma on just type in CI World Book Burma. You'll see we keep meticulous tabs on the racial distribution, the religious distribution, the gender distribution, the heteronormative versus LGBT one. This is why USAID and NED were backing and supporting Pussy Riot in Russia, to do these sort of insane, sort of feminist LGBTQ styled left wing street riots. And this is what they caused this international incident. You can see all the USAID and NED stuff on them for Pussy Riot is the music industry. And go to YouTube and look at their music videos if you want to see what state-sponsored music looks like.
So I'm just going to stop at the end. For people that don't listen to this sort of stuff at this level, that might be quite unbelievable to think that perhaps minority groups and music might have something to do with politics.
Pussy Riot, they were all right too. They had a good song.
I haven't actually I don't listen to them, but if I would really recommend that people listen to the 3 hours with Mike Benz and Joe Rogan to kind of get your head around it if you're quite new to this in New Zealand. It's what those of us who are looking at it and researching can see and can sense, but sometimes we can't tie things together quite so well as far as the funding, although to a certain level. So with all of the stuff that's come out about USAID, and obviously they're talking about the trans stuff internationally, it's like people are like, where is it here in New Zealand with the rainbow community? So and it takes the conversation away from what they're trying to make it to be. So the trans community will say, if you're questioning us, if you're not an ally, they use the word ally. They're all about themselves and their allies. So if you're not an ally, you're against them and you hate them and you think they're terrible and you want them to die. Well, it's nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with that. This is about looking at the money, looking at the industries that have been created, and looking at the harm that's been caused to our children through these industries that have been created, right? So let's look at the money. we're not looking at the individuals, we're looking at the organisations and trying to sort of unpack the big picture of how we ended up in this place. And it's happening in countries all around the world. So I know some outspoken people in this space in Iceland. So shout out to Eldur, Iceman, if he's listening, because they have.
Seriously, I want people to call me Iceman. Iceman, that's so good.
There's a population of 400,000 in Iceland, and it's completely rainbow washed. And
is it?
Eldur is a gay man there who actually really stands up for this whole, children are not born in the wrong body, and he can see that it's political. Now, he's had criminal charges laid against him because he posted online saying that a man can't be a woman. Like, it's so bad, and people were like, people know that this isn't right. Yeah. But I want to try and unpack
criminal
some
charges.
of the. It's crazy. Yeah,
Stupid.
and he was going for politics, so it was a hit piece on him. To shut him down. So this is how bad it is when the media is controlled, and the politics is controlled and the money is controlled. And then when we're in this situation here in New Zealand, little old New Zealand, where people think, how can it possibly happen? And well, sorry, but it is happening. So so we're just going to look at some stuff today. I have so much stuff, it's quite mind-blowing for me to even know where to start. But bear with me, because I'll try and go through some stuff just at a high level, and then I'd like to keep coming back and unpacking stuff down to a bit more detail.
Yeah.
This organisation is called ILGA, which is the International Lesbian and Gay Alliance, and ILGA World. So the reason that we're looking at this is it all sounds just kind of like a normal organisation, but what we actually find is ILGA is the world is the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans and Intersex Association. It's actually like an overarching organisation, peak body of these sorts of organisations all around the world. So I'm going to go and have a look at where it hits on New Zealand. About us and member organisations. So you'll see here it says it's an umbrella organisation representing more than 2,000 organisations from over 170 countries and territories. So it's the big kahuna, and we're going to go and have a look at the organisations that are in New Zealand that are part of ILGA. So we've gone to Oceania, and you'll see the massive list of Australian organisations. Australians
there's
right
one
in there.
Gay Panic.
Harbour City Bears. Anyway, we'll just go down to New Zealand because there's so much to cover. And for anyone who's looking at this stuff, they'll be familiar with some of these organisations. So Inside Out, we talk about quite a bit. Intersex Aotearoa, Rainbow Auckland, Rainbow Hub Waikato, Rainbow Wellington, Rainbow Youth, Safe Space Alliance, and the Te Whanawhana Trust are names that I'm familiar with. So,
do you want to make it a bit bigger on screen so that people can see that? There we go. Yeah. Yeah.
So these charities, these are all charities that don't pay tax and get government funding and private grants and things like that. They're all part of this organisation called ILGA. Okay.
Okay.
So that's just a little bit of background as to why we're looking at ILGA. So I'm going to just pull up their membership application form so that we can understand what it is that they do. So this is their application form, and let's just scroll down here.
I might just turn that mic to be a bit closer to you when you turned. There we go.
Okay. So benefits of being a member. This is what you get when you become an organisation that's affiliated with ILGA. You get access to international and regional networking, including conferences. Sounds nice. Access to training, study visits, and lobbying trips. So lobbying to me is political, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd imagine
I would say that it is.
Yeah.
Access to improving advocacy capacity and opportunities. So advocacy sounds like lobbying, which sounds political, right? Participation in decision-making process in the biggest global LGBTI organisation. Leadership development opportunities, access to information about the global situation of LGBTI people. So that would, to me, mean research. So there's all these research being done on these groups, and then through this organisation you have access to the research to find out how many they are and how they're being treated and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Shaping the future of the movement and activities of regional and world offices, choosing conference. They have a big conference every year. So it's all about sort of the advocacy side of it. They're not really doing any grassroots stuff. Closer cooperation with world and regional officers potential engagement with the UN, and the EC and others.
So they can get to be with the UN out of this.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to spend a bit of time looking
Wow.
at. So this is the connection to the United Nations, okay?
Right.
People, we talk about it with the kids stuff, that the relationship and sexuality education guidelines in New Zealand is actually coming down from the UN.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we already know that, but then it's like, well, that's the relationship and sexuality education. Where's the pride stuff coming from?
So now we're seeing just how intertwined they are. It's more than just sending great advice for school on sex ed.
Yeah. It's more than just a marginalised group. Scholarship applications from member organisations receive priority.
Oh.
So if you're part of the group, you're more likely to get a scholarship grant, is what I'm interpreting out of that. Could be wrong.
Okay.
So if I'm wrong, please
and then
tell me.
there's obviously there's more funding, so that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strength in numbers. So it's all about building a big gang.
Yep.
Okay. So that's what the membership is. Now, I'm just going to take us back a little bit in history. So ILGA's been around for a really long time. And this is an article, actually it was published this year, but it's talking about something that happened back in the 90s, so 1993. The ILGA, International Lesbian and Gay Association, was suspended from the United Nations. Why was it suspended from the United Nations? It was suspended because one of their member groups was NAMBLA. Have you ever heard of NAMBLA?
Yeah, because pedola is not a good name, is it? So they went with NAMBLA,
Yeah.
North American Man-Boy Love Association.
That's
I
right, which
have
is
heard of it.
pedophile group.
Indeed, it is a pedophile
so it's
group.
about
yeah.
man-boy love, so it's about
Yeah.
boy love, so it's about men and boys. So they were a member of ILGA back in the 90s, and
Right.
so they were temporarily removed from being part of the United Nations.
Yeah.
So this is actually an article with a timeline of it, and it's from the point of view of the LGBTQ community, or the.
So
yes.
are they saying that they were disgusted by NAMBLA's presence, and so they got rid of them?
They were
Try to do the right thing?
Not really, I don't think so. I think they sort of were like, well, what's the problem here? So we can go into it in a little bit more detail, but I'm actually quite new at looking at it as deeply as NAMBLA. So I'm just bringing it up to show the background.
Okay.
Other organisations here in New Zealand might have more information on this, but so if you look here, November 15, 1993, NAMBLA released a press statement entitled NAMBLA affirms their membership with ILGA. So they're saying ILGA's members continue long-standing support of man-boy love in the face of attack of the US government and right wing. How dare they say that pedophiles can't be part of this group?
Yeah.
And how dare that mean that they're not part of the UN?
Okay.
So it's got
Right.
a pretty deep, dark history. So then you see there in 1994, Republican Senator Jesse Helms proposes that they would cut.
Bring that up a bit.
What is that like?
Bring the size of that up a bit to read. What?
That much?
$118,875,000 of federal funding?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Earmarked to support international organisations unless the President of the Senate, that no United Nations agency or UN affiliated agency recognises any group which promotes, condones or seeks the legalisation of paedophilia. So,
Okay.
So
they're trying to clean up.
they're trying to get them to clean up. They're trying to say that if you want to be a part of the UN, ILGA, you shouldn't probably have NAMBLA in there.
Right.
So this is what was going on way back then. I have been told that they didn't actually formally ever say that they weren't affiliated with them, but what we'll see is that they are back connected with the United Nations.
Oh, they're back in cahoots.
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. So I'm just going to pull up. I've just got lots of things to pull up here, but this was just another article. Okay, so this is actually from NAMBLA.
Okay.
If anyone ever wanted to read an article from them, back in 1993, this is their press release. NAMBLA affirms membership in ILGA. ILGA's members continue long-standing support of man-boy lovers in face of attack from the US government and the right wing. How dare they?
That right wing.
Yeah. NAMBLA has been a member of ILGA for 10 years. We've been continuously active in ILGA longer than any other US organisation. NAMBLA delegates to ILGA helped write ILGA's constitution, its official positions on the sexual rights of youth. That would be sexual rights of underage people.
Mm-hmm.
And it stands against, sexual coercion and corporal punishment. They tie all that in, but really what they're doing is wanting children to be able to, wanting children to be able to consent to sexual activity in order to make pedophilia legal. That's what it seems to me.
Yeah.
So, So we can put the links up so people can go and have a look at this themselves. But you can see here, these statements by Secretariat's committee are a craven and dishonest attempt to satisfy the demands of the US mission to the UN. I mean, it's just criminal. Let's just have a look. ILGA's current positions on man, boy, love and pedophilia are explicit. In 1985, ILGA adopted a position on age of consent, pedophilia, children's rights that urged member organisations to lobby their government to abolish the age of consent law so long as there is adequate protection for youth from being sexually abused without the age of consent law.
Oh, that's a difficult position to gun for, isn't it?
In 1986, ILGA adopted a position that says the group supports the right of young people to sexual and social self-determination. So they've made their stance pretty clear. They want to have access to our children and they want it to not be a criminal activity.
And what year was this produced again?
So these
90s,
statements were in the 80s. They were kicked out of the UN.
This document was written in the 90s, right? And it's outlying its position over the years prior to that. So it was 1993. Okay.
Yeah. So 1993 was when the United Nations suspended ILGA's membership.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So and this shows us that they'd been involved for quite some time through the 80s leading up to it.
Well, not only that, but it's saying there that they helped to write the constitution for ILGA.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Interesting.
it goes right back into the history, the connection between ILGA and NAMBLA.
So as you connect the dots, you're sort of seeing that at the heart of ILGA is essentially a theme of pedophilia.
It appears that way to me. Yeah. That's what it appears to me. I can't make any judgments on that, but I'm just putting some dots together for people so that they can see what's behind what we're going to look at next.
Okay.
Okay, so let's fast forward to 2021. And we're back on the ILGA website. So in 2021, LGBT voices at the United Nations.
Hang on, this says Geneva, 25th of July, 2011.
Oh, yeah, sorry. What did I say?
2021.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. 2011. My bad. So 2011, LGBT voices at the United Nations, ECOSOC Council, votes grants. So they're back. They're back in with the United Nations. And you can see, so ECOSOC means the Social Council, UN Economic and Social Council, granted today consultative status to ILGA, International Lesbian, Gay and Trans and Intersex. They've added in trans and intersex.
Hang on. It's dawning on me now. Okay, so sorry Penny for interrupting you, but if I'm picking up what you're putting down, they didn't officially say they'd left.
NAMBLA.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
There's just been a period of time away and now they're back.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say it again, I haven't done a lot of research myself into NAMBLA and it's quite hard to find stuff here, but it wouldn't be beyond belief to believe that even if that organisation wasn't listed, that the people behind it might have created other organisations.
Can you just go to the top of the screen again?
Yeah, sure.
So the LGBT voices at the United Nations vote grants consultative status to ILGA. So and then in that sense, they're back in a position that maybe they were on track for previously, but had their NAMBLA issue.
Yeah,
and
not
now
only that,
they're kind of back, and that period of time has made it all just sort of go away from our minds.
But not only that, they're a member, they are consultants to the UN,
right.
So that will tie into what I'm going to sort of show
Right.
you next.
Yeah, yeah.
So just to tie it into what Mike Benz and Joe Rogan were talking about and what the world's kind of talking about with USAID, and you go, is there money? Is there money going? Because, you can't put into the US government spending stuff, Rainbow Youth or Inside Out. You won't come up with anything. So that's where this is important because it's like, well,
this is the cover for that.
who's the group above it, right?
Yeah.
And so I went on to the US government spending site, and I'm just going to pull this up now, and I searched up ILGA.
Right.
Right. So that's how I was trying to make the connection.
Smart. And
so
then
we've shown you that there's organisations in New Zealand that are actually dealing with children, right? Because like Rainbow Youth and Inside Out are picking up children.
Hang on. So there it is on usaspending.gov. Recipient of this bit of funding here is ILGA World, Rue Rothschild.
That's the road, and in fact, I've Google mapped it. So it's funny,
Rue
isn't it?
means
But Rue's
that's not
road.
a name. That's like Av.
Kind of
Right.
coincidental.
Yeah,
perhaps.
funny.
And it's just a dodgy-looking apartment building in Geneva. But anyway,
Oh, you found it on Google Maps, have you?
Yeah, I found it on Google Maps, screenshotted that. So anyway, what you'll see here is they've been given a grant for $2.1 million. But let's have a look at when that was, because ILGA's been around for ages, right? So let's go over the right-hand side and look at when that was given.
September 8th and 9th.
So like 6 months ago.
Just a few months back, yeah, okay.
And going up till 2026. So just before the American election.
So we're right in the middle of their budget.
Yeah, but just before the American election.
Oh, I see what you... Okay,
See where I'm going with this?
Yes,
So
I do.
USAID. So I'm wondering if part of the panic right now in the trans movement is their funding's about to get shut down, right? Because it's getting shut down in America, and then you go, well, is it going to get shut down here? I don't know. I mean, I can't trace the ILGA funding internationally to the New Zealand organisations explicitly through their annual reports, because they won't be out yet, because even if they were there, they weren't. So, ILGA's an international organisation, so, we can't track that exactly, but what we can see...
So they will actually be looking for their next round of funding, because they'll be thinking, gee, it's not that many months now till September, and Elon Musk and the Doge crew are sort of cracking down on where all the funding's coming from. Where's our next round going to be from, because it won't be from USAID.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, this is like this website has other funding things, and when we were in the studio with Anna, we were looking at all the stuff we were looking at was actually USAID. Some of it was from the CDC and things like that, but this one for ILGA is actually from USAID, which has been shut down. So maybe they're about to feel the pinch.
Can you speak to the exact amount that it seems they were given? I'm seeing 800,000 on the board, but also 1.3 and 2.1 million. Yeah.
So what this appears to be is a total grant of 2.1 million spread over a certain amount of time, right? So then it says, I don't know the difference actually between obligated amount and total funding. What would be obligated but not given? But it seems to me that perhaps 800,000 might have already been given. Or something like that. But the fact of the matter is it's at the beginning of their funding round, being September 2024, which was only 6 months ago, a couple of months before the election.
Right.
So whatever is going on here, they would have been expecting to see 2.1 million over the next couple of years, just this one organisation. And as you can see from their membership stuff, what they're really doing is running conferences and lobbying and advocating and things like that. And I don't
want to get too far ahead, but what are they doing exactly that concerns you with, their day-to-day operations as ILGA?
Well, in case I forget to bring it up later, we've got a situation here in New Zealand where Family First, which is Bob McCroskey, a conservative right-wing Christian charity, lost its charitable status, and I believe that was for supposed political messaging. Now you've got Brian Tamaki, and whether you love him or hate him, they're crying out for Destiny Church to lose their charitable status for whatever happened last week.
Yeah, I saw that on the weekend, yeah.
But what no one's reporting on is how political these pride agencies are, and they're all tax exempt, and they're all on the Charities Commission website. So why is no one looking at them and comparing their activities to political? Because they're all lobbying. They lobby the government. They do the legislation changes. So that's why I showed you the membership sort of benefits of being an ILGA, was these organisations get these benefits. They're not actually saying that they're offering counselling services to LGBTQ people. It's advocacy and lobbying. So that's what the money goes towards. Now, if you think back to what Mike Benz was just talking about.
Yeah.
Right? He's talking about political funding to be micro communities minority groups.
That's right.
To whip them up.
Take the embers of activity and then whip them up into a frenzy and into a fire.
And is that not what we're seeing?
Yeah. Yeah, true.
Right? So there's potentially political meddling. Well, I mean, potentially political meddling, weaponising minority groups. And this is not about the people involved in these, the trans right activists that are marching the streets, that are trying to shut down my meetings, that are doing all of that. They probably get up in the morning and absolutely believe that they're on the side of truth because of the indoctrination, because of the continued messaging, because they get given the scholarships, they get given the money, they get given the accolades, they get given the roles. So they're probably thinking that they're on the side of truth and right. So this is not about personalities here. This is about the weaponization of a population to create division. And then with what I do with Let Kids Be Kids, it's worse than that, because what it is actually doing is creating children who are really messed up, who are in distress, who think that they're born in the wrong body, and are oppositional to their parents because they've been indoctrinated at school and with adults that should know better than to teach them that stuff. So that's the granular fallout from this stuff. You know, there's the political fallout, but there's the in the homes fallout, which is why I spend the time doing it, because I know the stories. And I know that, you know, some people could just turn a blind eye to this and say, oh, it's just some silly political dance they're doing. Well, no, children are taking their lives. Children are being, you know, mutilated, castrated and sterilised for life. So we do have to look at this, and we do have to understand politically. I believe that the research that people like me and others are looking at is what the government should be doing. Someone should be getting paid a lot of money to be doing this research and digging around. I don't get paid anything to do this. I just do it because I have to do it, because I know that it's there and I want to know.
Yeah, we need our own Doge team who's going to get into the expenses and where they've gone off to black budgets and things, don't we?
We totally need our own Doge team, because there's a lot of money being misappropriated here. So I'm just going to bring up the next one, ILGA Oceania. So this is a website specifically for our region of the world.
Right.
Now, look at what it says. Right on the homepage, I'll just see if I can zoom in. International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans and Intersex Association. They've added all those other words. Supporting the rights of and providing a voice for all. And this is concerning lesbian, gay, intersex, bisexual, sister girls, brother boys. That sounds like children to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It sounds a little bit like the NAMBLA thing. Sister girls and brother boys. I hadn't come across that before until I saw this. Taka, Tapui, queer, gender care, the list goes on and on in the New Zealand and Pacific. But look at the next paragraph. ILGA is the United Nations non-governmental organisation for LGBTI people. So now they're not only a consultative group, they are the UN NGO for LGBTI. Right? Pretty significant, I would say.
Yeah, that is pretty significant. And that's some strong strings attached.
Yeah. What I'm going to show you now is lots of things to show you. I hope people are tracking through this and stay engaged. So they spend a lot of money each year having a world conference. And what I discovered when I was looking at the ILGA website was in 2019, New Zealand hosted it. New Zealand hosted the World Conference, okay, which, you know, it doesn't sound too surprising given that they're a member, so that's all well and good. So this is so it says ILGA World Conference is the largest global gathering of LGBTIQ change makers, and they've been going since the 1970s. So they say it's ILGA World is Queer Democracy in Action, and it starts at the ILGA World Conference, okay? So this is the 2019 conference in New Zealand, and you'll see here that the host organisations on the right-hand side, because a couple of the organisations that are part of it hosted it. So it's Intersex, Trust, Te Whana and Rainbow Youth. They hosted it. Now, what I want to look at is, so they still have, even though it was in 2019, they still have the program and all the documents and things like that up on screen. What I want to show you is actually on, I pulled the program down, but it's available online if you want to have a look at it. So they had their program, and literally all I did, and anyone can do this, like all this information is available. I'm just breadcrumbing it for anyone that's interested, or if you're happy with my take on it. So I actually went through the program day by day, and I looked for who the speakers were, who the keynote speakers were, and things like that. So there were some New Zealand people in there, which we may or may not get a chance to look at today. But this is a 30-page document, and the one person that I want to focus on looking at was this guy who was the keynote speaker. So I'm just going to go to his, so he's in the program.
Yeah, make that a little bigger, could you?
Yeah. I'm going to keep moving my mouse, sorry. So this is a guy called Victor Madrigal-Borloz. You give it a go.
Victor Madrigal-Borloz.
So he's a Costa Rican lawyer, and what it says on Wiki is between 2018 and 2023, he served as a United Nations independent expert on protection against violence and discrimination based on SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity. So he was a keynote speaker. He came all the way out to New Zealand, and you'll never believe what he was talking about, but the big thing that he's famous for is conversion therapy bans.
Bans.
So the ban on conversion therapy. So for those who don't know, conversion therapy is what they call, and how they weaponize it through the Pride movement is they call it when you pray the gay away. So
right. So
when someone
he
comes
got
out
rid of people having being allowed to do the whole conversion therapy. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So he came to the conference in 2019, and that was his key topic. By the sounds of it, was that he's travelled all around the world talking about conversion therapy and how terrible it is. Okay.
Sure.
So hold that thought, and then I'm going to just pull up a few different things here just to sort of explain. So this is the United Nations website, and there he is. Okay. So he, again, is the independent expert on sexual orientation and gender identity. So he's on the United Nations Human Rights Council. He's all about sexual orientation and gender identity. He's been in charge implementation of international human rights laws. So this is where I've looked at it, that actually this is all coming through at an international human right lawyer level. So it comes in through our legal system, and that's where they lobby to get the change of the terms and names, and say if you're a woman or a person identifying as a woman, and all these different names. So basically, at the very core, and we're seeing it rolling out really terribly right now, is anyone who isn't a woman but wants to be a woman can attach some sort of a name to themselves and say that they're like a woman, and then they have the same rights as a woman. Right? That's really the crux of it at the end of that legal wording. So it's
so
come
then they
through.
can go and compete in women's sports?
Yeah, but they can be in women's spaces. So they can be a man who wants to be a woman in a woman's prison, for example, and in women's only spaces. So this is where, and this conversation's been going on for a long time, so it's bigger than sports, but we're getting to the really gnarly
I get the
side
feeling
of this
from feminists, the sort of the old-fashioned feminists that came up through the 60s, 70s and early 80s, that really, really annoys the heck out of them, because they fought for women's spaces and the areas that they need for their own feelings of safety and equality and all that, and then some dudes just come along dressed as a lady and go, no, I can be in here now. That would be annoying, I imagine. Well,
in New Zealand, wasn't New Zealand the first country to give women the vote? I mean, you know, we've had hardcore lobbyists to stand up for women's rights for a long time, and I don't call myself a feminist. I've grown up in an era where that was all a given. You know, whoever came before me and battled for women to be treated as equal to men, that was all done and done by the time I grew up, you know. And then they had the lesbian and gay people that were lobbying for their rights, you know, which is fine.
Yeah.
But
totally fine. And can I just add to that? I just note you mentioned the pray the gay away thing, right? That's interesting because, I mean, my personal opinion on that is, you know, if you're gay, you're gay. If you're lesbian, you're lesbian. You know, live your life. Love who you want to love. You know, whatever. But it's interesting if you take something that has been widely panned, like how ridiculous that you could pray the gay away. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe it is. My opinion on it doesn't really matter, but it has been widely panned as a ridiculous thing that some people have tried to do. And so then you can jump on that bandwagon and just inch your way, taking something like, yeah, this is really ridiculous, and let's use it to leverage something in a different space.
Yeah.
And this is that different space.
100% that seems to be what they do. And the more that you look at the different people involved that make it to the front headlines of all of this, You know, back in the day when we used to apply for a job, or you'd be listed on your company's website with your bio, and it would say what your skills and experience were.
Yeah.
Now it lists their victim story.
Really?
Yeah. So
you've got to sort of narcissistically list the pain you've been in your life.
Yeah, and I might bring some of that up later when it comes to the youth advisory group. But you've got to be, this is the DEI high thing, is that you're going to assign yourself to a minority group. So whether it be about gender, or whether it be about race, or maybe you've got a disability, or maybe you came from a traumatized background. But that's basically what people's bios are now. So this whole story about praying the gay away has been totally weaponized and used as the sob story for people that who end up being on the front line.
I was a recipient of people who tried to pray me into something I'm not.
Yeah, I went to church with my parents, but I knew that I was gay, and then the pastor tried to pray for me, and that becomes this whole massive hit.
Yeah, I can't imagine how laughably silly that would be, and I'd go, okay, guys, but to turn yourself into a victim because of it.
Yeah. So that seems to be the narrative. However, it seems to be, from my digging, that this guy is a key proponent behind that narrative. So he's in the UN. He's really big on this conversion therapy. Conversion therapy needs to be
to stop. You must stop conversion therapy. Yeah, that's his thing.
Yeah. So he was a keynote speaker in 2019. So I'm just going to keep going.
Okay.
But so he's connected to Harvard Law School. Okay. So this is actually just recent, spring 2025.
How prestigious.
So he's connected to there. He's high up. Again, he talks about being on the Human Rights Council and things like that. So that's him come here in 2019. Now, this is him again in 2023 at the Naz and Matt Foundation. So this is not in New Zealand. But there he is again. United Nations, there he is in the middle. Foundation met with a UN independent expert on sexual orientation and gender identity. We had the privilege of meeting with him as a long-term member of the Ban Conversion Therapy Coalition. This group were invited to meet with him. So he's getting all around the world, obviously getting paid a lot of money to go and help countries to lobby their help these organisations that are part of ILGA, I would say, lobby their governments to push the Conversion Therapy Ban Act, right? So you may or may not remember what happened here in New Zealand, but
what is the? I couldn't really care less if conversion therapy is banned anywhere, because I kind of like whatever. I can't imagine, because I imagine you just are what you are. But why would it be so rabidly pursued and funded for someone to go around the world to push that into various governments everywhere? What are these tiny little steps getting at?
Well, what I want to bring up is the Wikipedia on Shaneel Lal. So Shaneel Lal may or may not be known to you, but he's known to lots of us that are looking at this. So he's a young them who is a Fijian but was brought up in New Zealand. Now, he's the shining light for this whole narrative, okay?
Wikipedia doesn't have his photo.
There's plenty of photos of him elsewhere. He's a model and everything. So I just want to walk you through this, because most people who are listening to this probably know that Shaneel Lal has been involved. So he's known as an LGBT rights activist, a columnist. So he gets his opinion pieces put into the Herald and things like that, and a political commentator. He's best known for advocating the ban of conversion therapy in New Zealand.
Right.
So in 2018, he was a schoolboy. He was named Dux at his high school. So if he'd come out back then, he wasn't clearly being marginalised, because he was Dux. So he was at Otahu College, and he was Dux in 2018. It doesn't say that he went to university or anything, but all of a sudden in 2019, because he was involved in youth parliament, he did a speech. So his story is, in 2017, he was volunteering at Middlemore Hospital. A church leader walked up to him and offered to pray the gay away. When he refused, in his words, the church leader wished hell upon them. So there you go. There's the victim story. Okay. So then you think, well, you've got this guy from Costa Rica coming to this conference in 2019, young Shaneel Lal, fresh out of school, right? I can't prove that he was at this conference, but in 2019 at the Youth Parliament, he kicked off about banning conversion therapy. So he had a plan to being conversion therapy. So he got on the Breakfast Show in 2020. He's been online all the time. He was working with Chris Hipkins when Chris Hipkins was the Minister of Education, working with him on all of this stuff. So you can see there that we worked with the Green Party. He helped to deliver a petition of more than 150,000. Pretty good for a kid first year out of school, right?
Do you think he gets funding to do this?
Well, I don't know why he would do it if he wasn't. Why has he got such a massive beef that he would turn it into this, right? So
is he another one of these people that are being groomed into certain positions? And if everyone can agree that praying the gay away is something we can provide funding for various people around the world, and then maybe connect the dots and you can go, okay, we can get them to do other things. We'll fund them for helping them ban praying the gay away. But that money gives them things that we can get them to do other stuff with, because they become put into positions of held up and lauded as spokespersons that are known media personalities that we can then ask to maybe say some other things about the rest of our agenda.
Yeah. Well, if you go back to the membership benefits of ILGA was that you'd get scholarships and things like that. So it's starting to point the dots together as far as how these people get prioritised into positions where they're influential. So Shaneel Lal went from being a schoolboy to being very influential within a year, at the same time that this guy came to this world conference in Wellington. So it was like, if this guy was travelling around the world, being invited to different countries and conferences and different organisations of this rainbow thing, if he wasn't doing that, then the timing was quite coincidental that he was here in Wellington in 2019, and in 2019 is when the conversion therapy stuff all kicked off. So what I'm showing is that there is a United Nations, let's just spell it out, there's a United Nations agenda behind the Conversion Therapy Ban Act and all the people behind it.
Okay.
Right? Is that a fair enough assumption?
It's fair enough.
Okay, well
Yeah.
I would beg to ask people to prove me wrong, given the timing. So he also created an organisation specifically around conversion therapy. Like, he obviously got a lot of money to do what he was doing. So yeah, there was an ongoing conversation about the conversion practices bill that went through as a bill through Parliament. And actually, what I'll do, I'm just going to go off script here, and I'm just going to pull up. Matt Doocey, who's the current Minister for Mental Health, and he was the Minister for ACC. And I just want to pull up his speech in Parliament at the second reading of the bill for the Conversion Therapy Ban Act, because we've got it on our YouTube channel. So I'm just going to pull that up. All right, so we've got the few minutes long of his whole speech here, but I'm just going to play the short, which is just a few moments of it, which is the key point. So this is Matt Doocey, the current National Minister for Mental Health. He's also the MP down in Rangiora, and I think he's the Associate Minister for Health. But this is him in 2022.
I also stand here as someone who's a proud father of 2 young children, a boy and a girl. And I do look forward to celebrate their sexual orientation, their gender identity that they will decide, and someone who grew up in a faith-based community and still goes to church. I also stand...
So he's there in 2022. I think he came in 2019. So from what I see, my guess is that he's a plant and he's been selected, not elected, into that position. They created a new ministerial role called the Minister of Mental Health in 2019, and they popped him in there, and he's been in there ever since. And that's his take. So he was voting for the Conversion Therapy Ban Act and saying, I've got a son and a daughter, but I'm looking forward to the day that they tell me what gender they choose. He didn't really sound convinced about it. He sounded like he was being told to say it. So he was working with Shaneel Lal clearly on pushing this
Such a ridiculous
through.
thing to say. It makes more sense if you were being told to say that.
Yes,
Yeah,
it makes more sense.
There was a lack of conviction in that.
There was there was a lack of conviction in what he was saying. So you can kind of see how it's all being tied around. So this, so it passed in 2022. So Shaneel Lal was a key driver behind it, and there were lots of people behind it, and people can go and read more information about that.
I got to just say, I love that little bit there. Lal told Vice World News that the ban on conversion therapy is a gift to future generations of queer people.
Yeah.
God, how presumptuous. Thank you for your gift.
Well, the crazy thing about Shaneel is, and we'll go in a little bit more, but he has been put front and centre of everything. So, so he was and this is actually where it touches on my situation personally, because I was on my school board, my son's school board, in these years. Okay, so in 2022, I was on my school board, and there was all these hit pieces going out in the mainstream media about Bethlehem College in Tauranga. And it was because, as a Christian school with their own charter, their stance was a marriage is between a man and a woman.
Right.
It didn't say that you weren't allowed to be together if you were homosexual. It just said the word marriage is sacrosanct for a man and a woman. You can have a civil union if you're not that, but a marriage is between a man and a woman. And most people wouldn't argue with that.
Sure.
But the point is, it's a Christian school with its own values.
Mm.
So if you didn't like it, just don't go to the school. Just don't put your kid in the school.
Yeah.
It's quite simple.
Really straightforward. Yeah.
So, but they targeted them. They did a targeted effort. And so Shaneel Lal was actually one of the ones writing the articles on it at the time. So if you think about it as far as it's not a natural thing and it's been contrived, they picked up on poor old Bethlehem College making a value statement, and they just kept going.
Bethlehem College just doing what it's always done.
Yeah, and they were still going last year actually, because something else came up about it, and we did a Let Kids Be Kids thing on it. But anyway, I was on the school board. We had our first non-binary potential student coming to the school, which had been happening at other schools for a really long time, and testing the boards out to see how readily they were about to jump to spending thousands of dollars on doing a separate toilet and changing the uniform policy to be agender and all of that stuff. Like, that's been sweeping through New Zealand schools for a long time.
Yeah.
It swept through my school quite late because we were sort of a conservative rural school, and it came through in 2022. Now, I'll never forget that the conversation we had about it, because even I was a little bit liberal at that point. I was like, oh, we're going to have to be careful about the human rights stuff here, and we have to play it really carefully. Now, what one of the board members said was, we're going to have to probably toe the line, because otherwise we're going to end up in the media like Bethlehem College does, and we don't want to do that with the school. So that's how it plays out in a school when the media is allowed to have a one-sided view on it. As you have board members in a school going, well, we're all about keeping the reputation of the school clean. We don't want to end up in the front lines. Now, I know that for a reason. I was there having that conversation, because when I woke up to all of this and I started looking back, and I started noticing that Shaneel Lal pretty much single-handedly was doing the hit pieces on Bethlehem College at the time. You can't tell me that that's not connected. The media is weaponized to shut down dissenting voices in positions of power. And school boards would be one of those places. They don't want to ruin the reputation of the school. They don't want to end up with the board on the front page of the paper. Okay? So it's actually really impactful.
Really interesting thought. Great observation. Yeah.
Well,
something to look at.
It's the observation that I just was there to see, and so I can tie that together. Yeah, so you can see here, Lal started a petition calling for the ERO, the Education Review Office, to launch an independent investigation into Bethlehem College, and for the Ministry of Education, the Minister of Education and Associate Ministers of Education to support the investigation. So he's a real weapon, right? He's a lobbyist, he's an activist, straight fresh out of school. This is still, only a couple of years out of school. How did he get that much power so quick? I would not know how my young boys would be able to get that much power so quick. Heterosexual boys would not be able to get that much power so quick.
No, it's remarkable.
Unless someone is behind them, they cannot be put into these positions so fast.
I tell you what, I've just noticed down a little bit further down below there, before you go past the advocacy to lift the gay blood donation ban there. That's fascinating, because I was just in Australia this weekend, and I've got and I have a Bachelor of Health Studies, and I was with some other friends that are also medically qualified, and some of them are gay, and they were telling me about a lot of their friends that had died in the 80s, around the same time Freddie Mercury died, right? And these are my friends and colleagues in the medical profession. They'd be horrified that because they're just perfectly aware of the higher risk for gay men to be HIV positive. What this guy's trying to do to remove to lobby the New Zealand Blood Service that they should allow gay men in monogamous relationships who have had sex only with each other in the last 3 months to donate blood. I mean,
yeah, he's touching on a whole different... It
doesn't matter if you're straight, gay, bi, lesbian. everyone would go, no, well, that's just this population has a higher risk. Don't put that into our blood circulation.
No.
That's nuts.
We're not being sexist.
No, it's not about
This
that.
is about this is not about you.
Yeah.
You know, they make it all about them. Oh, I need to have the rights to do everything. It's not about you. It's about the person that's going to get the blood,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But they make it all about them. So, yeah, he argued that anyone who hadn't had a new sexual partner in anal sex, who hadn't had multiple sexual partners in anal sex within the last 3 months, should be allowed to donate. So, yeah.
I suppose you're basing that on an honesty system.
Exactly.
Honest, I haven't had anal sex.
If, I know, right? If you're going to go and, be
We should probably cut that
promiscuous-
bit out.
If you're going to go and be promiscuous, how honest are you going to be when you fill out the form at the blood donation
I know,
centre?
right? Yeah.
I mean, they haven't. He probably didn't go and ask how many people in that position really were begging to give blood. To be fair, I mean, you just
Well,
go.
no, but
"You
this
know
is
what?
the thing. They're probably not. But it's another chipping away at an agenda and sending it down a certain direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with. I think you can't give blood after you've had a tattoo. You know, I mean, are you going to have are you going to have tattoo artists lobbying that they don't want to lose profit because people want a tattoo and then give blood 2 weeks later? You know,
Same. It's the
come
risk.
on,
It's the risk
you're
of dirty
making a
needles.
choice.
Yeah.
You're making a choice. You live with the choice that you've made, and choices have consequences. Let's grow up here. Choices have consequences,
Yeah.
right? I mean, what they're turning it into is a world with no consequences. Just do whatever you like, which is clearly what they're doing if you go back to the NAMBLA situation.
True.
So anyway, this young man, so he started a petition calling, and by the way, I think he works with the Labour Party now. So he's also been really involved with Rainbow Youth, and so as we saw before, Rainbow Youth is part of ILGA, so that could be potentially where they got him. I need to go back and have a look at that timing. So then you'll know, so in 2021, he confronted anti-queer Christian protesters at the Pride March. He loves being on the front line here, and then he's world famous now for, in 2023, helping to organise the counter-protest at the Kellie-Jay Keen, which is the Posie Parker event that went feral. So this is another side thing, which to me is super important, and people are always talking about this since, and it's been a very defining moment in New Zealand's history, and particularly for women. I look at it from the point of view of how the media was used to weaponise. Now, if we just think back to what Mike Benz was talking about contrived situations. So Kellie-Jay was coming in with, I think it was Speak Up for Women. The trans lobbyists would have planned what they were going to do, how they were going to do it, how the cameras were going to be on it, and how the media was going to respond to it and how the police were going to respond to it. That appears to be what happened. That whole situation was not a natural occurring incident of abuse against women's rights. And it's ongoing. But the point that I look at is how the media still speaks about it. Like, so now when you're looking at even in school stuff where it talks about how LGBTQ is a marginalised, stigmatised group, the evidence that they have to prove that is the news articles on that event.
Okay, so it relates back to something that they've been able to anchor at a point in time in history and always refer to it.
Yeah,
then you're sort of creating this unquestionable moment of truth.
Yeah, where they're
Right.
saying that the poor trans people got treated badly. Well, actually, we all know, because the cameras were there, that it was the trans people that were being awful to the women. They weren't letting women speak in women's spaces. That's a
Right.
big conversation.
So
But
they're sort of rewriting history by referring back to it incorrectly.
they're trying to rewrite history by strongly having the media only saying one side.
Right.
And now that media isn't just in media, it shows up in school books. Kind of see where you're going. So when you go back to the Mike Benz conversation about how governments contrive these things, they light a tinderbox under a marginalised group of people. Does that make sense? So yeah, so he's just one of the people that's been used here. So you'll see here, Lal advised the Minister of Education, Chris Hipkins, for 3 years as a member of the Minister's Youth Advisory Group. Now we're going to have a look at that in a minute. Lal has sat on Amnesty International's Youth Task Force. He served as a global youth leader for Open Government Partnership. Now Open Government Partnership.
And he's clearly good looking because he's a finalist for Mr. Gay New Zealand.
Yeah, he's a model. He won Young New Zealander of the Year in 2020. I mean, you haven't seen any New Zealander who's had as many accolades as him. Now you'll notice that In 2018, he was at high school, and in 2019, he was an activist. This kid didn't go to university. He didn't seem to go to media school to learn how to be a journalist or anything. He got activated. And I'm not doing a personal thing on Shaneel here. When I look at him, I think he's actually been weaponised and he's a victim of this. Something has happened where they've gone, he'll do. We'll put him here and we'll put him here and we'll put him here and he'll be the poster boy for us in New Zealand. But also it affects legislation because at its heart, they're a lobby group and they do advocacy and they push and push and push to change our legislation. Once it's changed, very hard to change back, as we all know. So you never see as many things here. So he was finalist for Mr. Gay in 2020 at a ripe 19 years of age, you know. He did all this advocacy work. He's written in the Herald so many times. He's been interviewed by everybody, and it just goes on and on and on and on.
Wow. How many high school graduates get to write in the Herald? It's day one of their time out of, you know, high school. You didn't even have to go to university to be a reporter.
Yeah, he didn't appear to be. And what's really scary when you look at his stuff, because he writes really well.
Sure.
But they're all opinion pieces.
Sure.
So,
do you think he's just signed his name to them?
I think he's probably written them, probably with some help, I don't know. But he's angry and he's out there, but he's getting all the backing for it. And so that's what I'm saying is people get up in the morning who get all the backing for it, and they probably genuinely believe they're doing the right thing because everyone's patting them on the back. He's getting Young New Zealander of the Year. He's getting all the accolades. He must have truckloads of money.
Yeah, must do.
For a young kid. He can't be doing all of this off the skin of his own nose, right? I haven't really seen many Wikipedia reference lists more comprehensive than his. He was putting it up himself. I don't know, because you can probably do that. I just want to show you. I just want to go to where it said that he was the advisor to Chris Hipkins through the Youth Advisory Group. So I just want to pull up a Substack that Let Kids Be Kids did in November, where we actually raised the concern that we have around the YAG, which is the Youth Advisory Group for the Ministry of Education. So we talk about DEI, which is diversity, equity and inclusion. And what we seem to be seeing here with the Ministry of Education's Youth Advisory Group, which you remember Shaneel was on when he was younger, is they appear to be DEI hires. So they don't appear to be hired for their representation or their skill
their merit
across
at their job.
The population of youth. They have to tick boxes. So that to me is a DEI hire.
I see.
So they have certain criteria that they must meet. So the purpose of the Youth Advisory Group is for youth to share their experiences and perspectives on education with the Minister. So they are the mouthpiece to the Minister of Education representing youth. You would think that it should represent youth, but here we go. The selection criteria, the Youth Advisory Group, which has about 12 people in it from throughout the country, teenagers, is expected to have gender diversity, ethnic diversity, regional diversity, disability lived experience, different community cultural experiences, different types of education. So in this article, we go in and talk about them all, and we tick the boxes of there's like 3 that are gender diverse, 4 that are racially diverse, Is that representative of the population base of students in New Zealand, or is it contrived because it's full of people and their bios are literally their sob stories, their trauma stories, their victim mentality stories?
That's shocking.
It's shocking. That's how he got in, right? He was one of these kids when he was at school. And so what's going to happen with the next ones? I'm calling it out because it's actually a really big deal, because the ministry, the government departments do these things. They put these things in place, and we're all just trusting that, surely it would make sense that you'd have the right people in there advising. But Shaneel's an example of what happens at the other end of it. These people go off to the UN, or they go off to open societies or whatever, and they go and get their scholarships and they get all their grants and they get all their money, and then they come back and they lobby and they advocate and they're activists. It's dangerous. They're called change makers. Change maker is a new buzzword.
But really they're just people in pain in their own sort of victim body of hurt for what's unresolved for them?
Well, we talk about going back to your primary trauma or trauma bonding. So often these people will have something going on. And we say that these are young people in distress. Something's going on with them. There's a reason why they're not comfortable in their bodies. They might be gay. They might have had their gay prayed away, but does it mean that they need to launch a national campaign and get travel all around the world and get the headlines and everything and keep talking about it again and again and again? Is that the way that they're going to heal?
Yeah, and of course they're just going to be rewarded for staying in that unresolved space.
Yeah, because misery loves company.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And what we talk about, and Elizabeth Cave talks about in the Let Kids Be Kids roadshow, is if you hyper focus on a certain part of your identity to the detriment of the foundation of your identity, being basic humanity and character, you have an unstable identity. So if you're focusing on gender, if you're focusing on race, if you're focusing on your difference in society or marginalised piece, because we all want to fit in, right? But I don't want to be like everybody else. And actually, they're trying to make out that if you are different to everybody else, there's something wrong with you. No, you're not. You're just you. Just be you. They need that message, because people that grow up with this hyper focus on a certain part of their identity, they do need constant affirmation. They cannot cope with criticism. Right? Their whole world will fall apart if you dare criticize. So that's what they've created. That's why they can't criticize the pride movement, because we'll hurt their feelings because they are in trauma.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I wish Shaneel good luck with resolving those if that's something he's dealing with. I mean, he'll soon find out what he can and can't say if he chose to say something of his own opinion that wasn't funded, because then you'll soon get told what you're allowed to do.
Well, I mean, for Shaneel Lal, he seems to be doing just fine, because here he is on Forbes. He's a poster child.
Wow.
And I feel sad for him that he's a poster child. So I just found this while I was looking around, but there's just so much online about him. Yeah, so he created a group. He founded the Conversion Therapy Action Group. So that's what he did as a teenager. So really activated. He's now a law student. He also he was part of this open government partnership. So this is where you see that they take these young people. So it would have started back at that youth advisory group.
Yeah.
And they see their potential to be a change maker, which is to challenge norms.
Yeah.
And there he is on the left hand side. So he just gets all the accolades. There's others in other countries. There'll be others coming through. We need to look out for them, because they're not there by accident. They're not there simply from their own. I'm sure that he's great at what he does, but they're not there simply because he's so great.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense to anybody that he just got there off his own back, right?
Sure.
So yeah, and actually I just found this one that he posted just the other day.
Accepting an award for writing is not lost on me. I'm acutely aware that in many places across the world, those who dare to speak the truth are persecuted. And as we've heard from our Palestinian sister Plastia, Israel has murdered more than 100 journalists who have dared to show the world the suffering of Palestinians. As an indigenous person, but at the core, a human, I find the suffering of indigenous peoples in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Sudan, in Congo, in West Papua, in Kanaki, New Caledonia, painful beyond words can express. But even more agonizing, I have found the lies of Western media.
So I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I just found this when I was looking. So this is Shaneel, and he is accepting Journalist of the Year award at the One Young World Summit, and he only put this up 4 months ago. So this is a 2024 thing. He's just put it up on his own channel, and there's only 6 subscribers, so it's not something that's gone really viral. But again, he's won an award. So, and at this point, I actually just cracked up laughing, because I went to look at One Young World because I hadn't heard about this one, and look, there's Trudeau right there in the front.
Comrade Trudeau.
Yeah, so he's there right in the front, and sorry, I'm just going to try and find my mouse. So they're looking at young leaders tackling the pandemic. So they're tying all of that in. Pretty sure this is the one. So if I download here, look who's sponsoring the One Young World.
Ah, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Who would have thought?
Yeah, so this is interesting, isn't it? So the previous stuff was about COVID, so now it's all that. But he just won Journalist of the Year with them, and they're funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here, folks.
Move along, folks.
Nothing to see. It's all just a coincidence. I just want to bring it right back to New Zealand. So this is just an example of what's going on in the Herald here. And this is Shaneel Lal with Bethlehem College. So he does all these hit jobs. He's connected also through here to a guy called Gordy Lockhart. So Gordy Lockhart is a long-time Tauranga activist, and he's the one that was lobbying recently for the rainbow crossing that went on there. So they're all connected. They all get in the media. They all slight on Bethlehem College, and they're all out there advocating for our rainbow crossings that the council's paying for and all of that stuff. So,
wow, a real war on Bethlehem College, huh?
A real war on Bethlehem College. I just want to close out this bit because there's so much more that, I mean, I could just go on forever, and I don't want to go on forever, and we'll do it in lots of different bits. But the kickback on this is huge globally. So, you know, those of us who are looking at what Trump's doing with the executive orders and are going, well, we wish we had a Dodge here in New Zealand. We wish we could have executive orders here in New Zealand.
Trust me, we've got plenty of Dodge here in New Zealand. We've had some Doge.
Yeah, Doge, sorry. You know, we're wishing that we had a parliamentary system where people could make quick decisions when we know that children are being harmed and that people are being harmed, and we don't seem to have that. And frustration is rife, and maybe that's all part of the plan as well. Feels like government's been quite destabilised at the moment. There's calls for lots of people to resign. There's arguments on both sides of things. Everybody feels it's a hot bed of dissent at the moment, right? And those of us on our side of it that are looking are kind of going, well, you've got the mainstream media still being really left-wing, and then you've got the right-wing people, you know, sort of doing, you know, looking at the evidence and things like that. What the LGBTQ community are doing is, and this is actually ILGA again, is there's lots of websites, lots of them around the world, and they're all talking about there being a war on human rights because of his executive orders relating to women being safe in women's spaces, getting rid of gender ideology and things like that. So this is ILGA, so they have a statement out about it, and you could go to many different in fact, I was looking at one, I didn't pull it up, but I was looking at one in South Africa today. So they've all put these blanket statements out about the poor people that are going to suffer when Trump puts his executive orders in, and he's you know, a phobic, and he's all these things, and these poor people.
Yeah, actually, I saw one that just this morning, actually, on a thing that came up on a thread that I'm in, and there was a reporter standing outside a sexual health clinic. Have you seen this one?
No.
And it's beautifully dressed black lady. She must be in the legacy media. You know, she had all the gear, right?
In America?
No, this is somewhere in Africa.
Okay, yeah.
Well, you know,
yeah.
Black lady in Africa.
Yeah.
And they're following a woman who's trying to get into, who's walking into a clinic, but she's like, oh, what's going on? Oh, I can't seem to. And then it cuts back to the reporter who's holding the microphone. Excuse me, are you trying to get into the sexual health clinic? And then it's back to her. Yeah, what's going on? Back to her. Well, you can't, you see, because USAID and President Trump has cut the funding here. And then it's back to the lady. What am I going to do? And then the reporter, yes, I'm afraid you won't be able to get your treatments for AIDS here anymore. And then back to the lady and looking in despair, and then it sort of fades out. And they're just pumping this message. I mean, it looks so contrived, and also it's sad. It's sad that if that's true, that those countries don't care for their own people. Because you'd think that if your only funding is coming from this one place that does a sort of a year-by-year funding round, that you would have something for yourself if you care about your own people. And maybe they don't, and that's really sad, but that's not USA's fault.
Well, no, but that's what it's calling out, right? Is actually, oh my gosh, USAID money contributed to the growth of this industry. At the tail end of it, what you have is distressed people who have had their personalities and their bodies messed with, who may or may not be left with the right kind of help, okay? Because they're partway through procedures and they are messed up in the head probably, and they don't know what to think. So of course they're going to target the people that are not affirming them, like we talked about, unstable identity. So those people need help. There's no denying those people need some help to actually help to unpack psychologically what has happened. But the way that I look at this they're using the emotional blackmail to say Trump's a terrible person for doing this. Why? Because they've just got their funding cut. They're all about to be out of a job.
Yeah, they're
right?
all squealing because they've got no money.
Yeah, I mean, that was what was happening at the USAID offices. They keep interviewing all these people that worked there, saying, we've worked there for 30 years, we're amazing people, and now we just turn up and our job's gone. Well, my understanding is that that's been shut down in order to investigate the fraud. And yeah, some good people are going to lose jobs, but let's investigate the fraud so that the country can be set free. And that's what's happening here. The actual cry is because the people in charge know that they're about to get the tap turned off, right? The people down the bottom that genuinely believe this narrative, they're the ones that we actually need to help.
Actually, the people at the bottom helped people with various things and actual proper aid, not the AID stuff.
Not AID.
And maybe we're doing good things that was perhaps charitable and helping funding get to the right place, but it's such a small percentage of the nasty crap that was going on.
Well, in the book, The Queering of the American Child, that we talk about in a previous Substack at Let Kids Be Kids, it talks about the fact that the people at the very top of this industry, let's call it an industry because someone's winning out of this, they know what they're doing, right? But the people a couple of layers down don't. They genuinely have bought into that, and I'm going to call it this, it's a cult. They've genuinely believe that what they're being told is true, that children can be born in the wrong body, that puberty blockers are reversible and safe, that they can chop their breasts off and that turns them into a male. They're genuinely believing that. The detransitioners out there that are talking about this, they genuinely believed it. They were psychologically harmed in order to harm their bodies, and they woke up and went, oh my gosh, I'm part of the biggest medical fraud in history, and the people that did it to them don't want to know.
No, suddenly they've disappeared when you're not happy with the outcome.
Yeah, and so that's the big thing that is being talked about. There's a lag here in New Zealand because there aren't a lot of people that have gone through that therapy that have come out and said that they're detransitioners, but there's lots of them in Australia, and there's a documentary that we talk about. So it's happening. People still can't seem to quite believe it's real here in New Zealand because they haven't seen that, but gender clinics are popping up around the country. They've definitely infiltrated the sex education in schools, you know, and this is all happening through funding and backing, political backing, media backing, and all of this big international play. So, and the last thing I'm just going to pull up there is the same thing again, but it's actually from Harvard Business Review. So this is taking it back to, you can take it back to that UN guy that was connected to Harvard. You know, this is the level at which this narrative is falling on us right from the top, you know, what Trump's second term could mean for DEI, you know. So the narrative is strong. They still own the media channels. And we have to get talking about this face to face and in our groups and however we can, because what I care about is the children. What I care about is the children that trust adults, whether it's their parents, whether it's the people at school, whether it's the people at the psychologists, the psychiatrists, the school counsellors, the nurse. Children should be allowed to trust the people around them in positions of power and their adults. And we now can see very clearly that this is a political and financial situation. And I mentioned this on a Reality Check radio interview, but I believe our children have been tokenised. Someone or many people have seen that they can profit off our children in some way, medicalise them, castrate them, sterilise them, traumatise them, misappropriate their education, funnel them into these narcissistic industries where they're actually not producing anything of value in the world. There are more rainbow agencies in New Zealand that are charitable, tax-free organisations than I can count, and they're popping up more and more all the time. Who's staffing them? These young people that come out who really believe that they're change makers, right? And they're actually creating a shitstorm, sorry to say, of harm.
Wow. Imagine if you actually thought you were a change maker.
Yeah. I mean, we want change
totally,
makers. We want our young people to be looking at solutions and doing great things, but this is not change making. This is harm.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Pen. I guess I'll see you on the next one.
Yeah. See you soon.